In the Absolute Universe, Diana was never raised among the Amazons. She was cast into hell as an infant, exiled by the gods, and raised by the witch Circe in a realm built on punishment and despair. She grew up without the knowledge of her true heritage, but hell did not make her cruel. It made her disciplined. It taught her magic, restraint, and the cost of power. When Diana escaped the underworld and entered the mortal world, she came as a protector. She defeated the Tetracide, a devourer of bodies, minds, and souls, and in doing so became something profoundly destabilizing in this universe, a symbol of hope. But doing this had a cost. To defeat a creature that could not be reasoned with, Diana tried everything. But in the end, she resorted to using her lasso of transmogrification on herself, becoming Medusa. And the crucial point is that she didn't become a Medusa, she essentially became the mythological Medusa, although briefly. But it was enough to leave an impression on her. Because Medusa is not merely a monster. In many tellings of her story, she is a victim, punished by the goddess Athena, transformed into something terrifying after enduring violation and injustice. By becoming Medusa, Diana did not just gain the power to petrify her enemy, she inherited the weight of that tragedy, the exile, the rage, the loneliness of being feared for what was done to you. Now in the aftermath, Diana is haunted by the memory of Medusa's pain. She finds herself praying to Athena, not in anger, but in compassion, begging for mercy for the woman behind the myth. Now, I know there will be some viewers clenching their fists and gnashing their teeth, claiming that Athena is being besmirched. I know this because I've seen similar comments on my other Absolute Wonder Woman videos. A small but vocal subset of viewers periodically accuse me of misrepresenting mythology because this series presents a different version of the Greek gods, which is funny because I don't write these comics. Talk about shooting the messenger. That's not to say that I've never made a mistake. I still can't believe I called Persephone the goddess of the harvest, that's Demeter, but that was just sloppiness on my part. The thing that these critics seem to forget is that mythology is not history carved into marble, and it never was. The Greeks themselves told wildly different versions of the same stories depending on the century, the city, or the poet holding the lyre. Homer's gods are not Hesiod's gods. Euripides reshaped heroes to suit tragedy. Philosophers later reinterpreted the entire pantheon as allegory. There was no sacred master copy, no definitive continuity. Myth was a living tradition, revised, reframed, reimagined across generations. And that's even before the Romans turned up and decided that they knew better. All that is to say that if the ancient world felt free to reshape its gods, it feels slightly odd to insist that modern storytellers must freeze them in place. And writer Kelly Thompson has talked about this in an interview with Casually Comics, linked to in the info button, where she talked about people complaining about her takes on mythology as if they weren't accurate. But the thing to remember is that this is the Absolute Universe, a reality engineered by Darkseid, a world literally shaped by a god who equates order with control. The idea that such a presence wouldn't distort, influence, or fundamentally alter its mythology seems far less convincing than the alternative. So of course, the myths are different, the universe itself is different. That's the whole premise, not ignorance. And this comic feels like a response to those complaints. Because while Diana attributes Medusa's fate to Athena, Athena claims she had nothing to do with it and that the myths are wrong. Diana argues that the public perception is that Athena was involved, whether that's true or not, so she needs to help. Athena is reluctant to get involved though, because it may be perceived as a confession of guilt. So Diana instead offers to save Medusa herself, but with Athena's blessing, and to do this a trade must take place. Diana swaps all of her powers in exchange for a specific ability that will help her on her quest. So what this means is that Diana is essentially mortal. She can't fly anymore, she's not super strong, and she has to make her way to Medusa's lair on foot, which is a challenge. There's a funny line where, upon reaching the summit of the cliffs, Diana wonders how Batman does this kind of thing, given that he has no powers. But when she enters Medusa's lair, she puts on her helmet and covers her eye slots, effectively blinding herself. And it's then that Medusa's sisters, the Gorgons, strike. They are accustomed to visitors coming to try and kill Medusa, and so they are vicious in their attacks. Diana insists that she's there to help them, and explains that she wants to use her power to restore their sister, but they won't listen. Diana doesn't retaliate though, and without her powers, she takes a battering. The sisters were really just playing with her, softening her up for Medusa, and they remove her helmet. Like her sisters, Medusa isn't interested in listening to Diana. Instead, she plans to turn her to stone. But Diana reveals her trump card. She had swapped her powers for the ability to be impervious to Medusa's gaze. When Diana became Medusa, she felt everything Medusa felt, the anger, the despair, the injustice, and she believed that all Medusa needed deep down was to be seen. And I think that's really what any of us want, not necessarily just for people to look at us, but to understand us. How many of the world's problems have come about because people feel trapped and helpless and not listened to, unseen, unrepresented, ignored? It's pretty much the root of most of society's problems, and it turns out that this is also Medusa's root problem, because when she looks Diana in the eyes and she doesn't turn to stone, she weeps. And her immediate reaction to this vulnerability is to tense up and hiss. Remember, anger is a secondary emotion that people feel in response to an underlying feeling, but Diana perseveres. She explains how she felt Medusa's anger and pain and knew that it was unjust. And the really funny thing here that goes back to my earlier point about how myths aren't set in stone is that it's been so long, even Medusa doesn't clearly remember what happened to her. She notes that her sisters have their own stories, that they are adamant are true, but likely none of them are. With that being said, Medusa accepts Diana's proposal and uses the lasso to transform into whatever form she desires. She could be anything or anyone, but she chooses to revert to her true form. And if the point about shifting mythology wasn't 100% cemented in readers, the final words of the Gorgons, where they ask who the person was, Dinah, did they say? Hammers the point home. And the story ends with Diana leaving the Gorgon lair, satisfied in the job well done. Absolute Wonder Woman Annual 1 is available now from all good comic shops. I would encourage you to research your local comic shop, and if you don't have one, I'm certain there are dozens of good stores nearby that would be happy to mail you your comics. If you're opposed to the idea of cluttering up your home with comic books, then you can get this one digitally from places like Amazon as well as Neon Ichiban. Personally, I prefer physical comics, but I do like the convenience of having thousands of comic books accessible from my phone. But you do what works best for you. Nothing too crazy went on with my physical collection this week, but Gosh Comics are having a special Batman event on Sunday with over 22,000 items on sale. This includes everything from Golden Age comics through to statues, props and memorabilia. My wallet is ready. Next time. Now, I know I said there was only going to be one comic coming out this week that I was going to talk about, but DC have just relaunched their Vertigo brand with Bleeding Hearts #1. This was written by Absolute Martian Manhunter writer Dennis Camp, with art by Stipan Morian. 10 years after the world ended in a zombie apocalypse, a shambling corpse named Poke finds that his heart has started beating again. But what could this mean? Turns out there's quite a lot, so I want to discuss it. If you enjoyed Camp's work in Absolute Martian Manhunter or The Ultimates, then I think this dark comedy is really worth your time. And next week I'll return to the Absolute Universe to talk about Absolute Batman 17, where the first of Joker's Arc M outpatients turns up in Gotham, Poison Ivy. Hope to see you then.